Alright, here's Chapter 4, Lesson 6. This is on multiplying fractions. I'll also be doing the guided practice off page 314. Alright, so I'm going to review addition, subtraction, fractions, and then I'm going to also throw in multiplication and division. So, I'll do it this quickly. So, addition, subtraction. Remember, the first step was you had to go to a common denominator. You have to be in matching denominators to add and subtract. That's the same thing as like lining up your decimals. You have to line up your decimals to add or subtract decimals, not so much on the multiplication, right? I always make that little statement, whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So if you took the bottom times 5 to get to a common denominator, you better take the top times 5. In doing so, you'll be taking it times 5 over 5, which is 1. It means you haven't really changed it. Okay? After you've gone to common denominator, your second step is basically add or subtract the top, according to whether it's an addition or subtraction problem, and leave the bottoms as that common denominator. Remember, that common denominator is really just it's like a label. It's what size pieces they are. Okay? So now today we're going to deal with multiplication. Multiplication of fractions is totally different. You don't need to be in common denominator. In the same way with adding decimals, remember, if you're adding decimals, you have to line up the decimal. So even if it's like 16.3, you have to line up the decimal. The reason is because you need to be adding your hundredths to your hundredths, your tenths to your tenths, your ones to your ones, and your tens to your tens. We need to be in the same size pieces. When you multiply it, if we were multiplying these fractions, you don't need to line up that decimal. In fact, I don't like that extra 0 there. I probably would have slid this 6.3 over to here and multiplied, and then of course at the end, you remember you count the number of digits behind the decimal and move it over that many places. Okay, so that's multiplication and addition of decimals, which is a good review for multiplication of fractions and addition and subtraction of fractions as well. If you can get this connection, they have some similarities. Alright, so multiplication, first thing you need to do is you need to go to improper fraction. We don't want to be taking a two-part number. For example, when I talk about 2 1/7, that has a whole number part and a fractional part. I don't want to be taking this times something, because if I took it times 4 1/3, here's the tendency. People want to take 2 times 4 and get 8. 1/7 times 1/3 and get 1/21. But the problem is, you took 2 times 4, but you never took 2 times 1/3. And you took 1/7 times 1/3, but you never took 1/7 times 4. We need to take the whole thing times the whole thing. The way we do that is we get those whole things to be an improper fraction. So let me review that real quickly. You multiply the denominator by the whole number and then add the numerator, because you have 2 that you have all 7 pieces. So that'd be 14 pieces. Then you have 1 extra piece. You have 15 pieces. Remember, the bottom is how big they are. They're just sevenths. So let me do that over here. I have 4 that have all 3 pieces. That's 12. And then I have 1 extra piece. That'd be 13 pieces, right? And they're thirds. So now I've gone to improper fraction. Don't need to be in common denominator. Need to be an improper fraction. Second step, you don't have to do, but I would suggest you do it. This is the only time we do it. People try to do it on proportions in different places, but you can cross simplify. That means if there are factors diagonally that would cross simplify, let's do that. So let me go back to this problem actually. We'll just use it as my example problem. Do you notice that 3 and 15 have a common factor? When I say cross, I'm looking diagonally. You can always simplify up and down, right? But this is the time that you're going to be able to cross simplify. So I look at 3 and 15. 3 goes into both of them, so I will divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 becomes 1. 15 divided by 3 becomes 5. And what I've done is I've simplified this problem, and now I don't have to deal with as big of numbers. I would just be getting 5 times 13 is 65. 7 times 1 is 7. We're at 65 sevenths. We could simplify that from there to 9 2/7. Alright, so cross simplify. Then, the third step, I'm going to give you this third step every time. Last time we added or subtracted and left the bottoms. Now we multiply the tops and we multiply the bottoms. So let me go back to this problem. I multiplied 5 times 13 to get 65. I multiply the bottoms, 7 times 1 to get 7. And I get 65 over 7. Now, at the bottom of every single thing should always be simplified. When I look at 65 sevenths, it needs to be simplified. So I would then divide it. It goes in there 9 times with the remainder of 2. So remember, it goes in there 9 times with the remainder of 2. Those are sevenths, remember? So 9 2/7. Alright, so there's your rules. Improper fraction, cross simplify, multiply the tops and the bottoms. Now, if they're too small, this is the guided practice off page 314. If they're not improper, of course you can't go to improper. Now these happen to be in a common denominator, but did they need to be? No, they didn't need to be in common denominator. So I can't go to improper fraction because they're both already have only one identity. They're regular proper fractions. I'm going to look to cross simplify. 2 and 3, nothing goes into them. 3 and 1, nothing goes into them. So I'm ready to multiply the tops. 2 times 1 is 2. 3 times 3 is 9, and I have 2/9, my answer. Now number 2, be careful, you have negatives. Here's what you'll see me do with negatives is as soon as I realize I have a fraction problem with negatives, I'm going to use my rules to figure out whether it's positive or negative, and I'm going to put that answer so I don't forget it. So, you ready? 2 negatives in a multiplication problem that's even, so it's going to be positive. I'm going to put that positive so I just remember my answer is positive. Alright, once again, I can't go to improper fraction, they're both proper. So I look to cross simplify. This time I can cross simplify. By the way, I'm doing it now with their absolute value, so I don't care about these negatives, right? 4 goes into both 8 and 4, so let me divide out of 4. Divide by 4, you get 1. Divide by 4, you get 2. Nothing goes into 1 and 9, so let me cross, or multiply across. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 9 is 9. I got 2/9 on both problems. That's kind of strange. Okay, 2/9. Let me do number 3. This time I'm going to have to use that rule of, this one has 2 identities. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this as an improper fraction. So review, 4 times 2, because I have 2 that I have all 4 pieces, that's 8 pieces, plus 1 piece is 9/4 times 2/3. Alright, I look to cross simplify. Oh, this is nice. I can divide by 3 right here and get 1, divide by 3 here and get 3. On this one I can also divide by 2, so let me divide by 2 and get 1, divide by 2 and get 2. Now I'm ready to multiply across. 3 times 1 is 3, 2 times 1 is 2, and I get 3/2. Your last step, of course, is what? That I should have written up here, simplify. So let me show you how that is done. Remember, this is a division problem. Top number goes in the box. It goes in there one time with a remainder of 1. It means it makes one entire thing with a remainder of 1, and that 1 needs to be divided by 2 further. So 1 and 1/2. 1 and 1/2. Alright, number 4. Number 4 says, the weight of an object on Mars is about 2/5 its weight on Earth. I'm going to read that with the extra word that's sometimes there. It's the weight of an object on Mars is about 2/5 of its weight on Earth. They skipped that word of, but that of means multiply. How much would an 80 1/2 pound dog weigh on Mars? Okay, so I'm saying I need to be taking 80 1/2 times 2/5 to find out what is 2/5 of 80 1/2. Once again, improper fraction, so multiply, that'd be 160 pieces, plus 1 is 161 pieces. How big are those pieces? They're halves, and I want to find 2/5 of it. I can look to cross simplify. I notice that 2 will divide in there once, 2 will divide in there once. I'm ready to multiply across. I get 161, I get 5. Now I need to simplify that, so 161 divided by 5. Top number goes in the box. So, goes in there 3, bring down, go all the way to the decimal, because here would be your decimal, right? 1 remainder out of how many? Out of 5, so 32 1/5. And then of course we would label it, that would be 32 1/5 pounds. Okay? I did want to show you one more, and that's if you had something like this. So let me do one more problem. 7 1/4 times 10. Okay? The problem is some people don't remember how to change 10 into an improper fraction. So we can do this one. Multiply, you have 7, you have all 4. Add your 1, 28, 29/4. How do I write 10 over 10 as a fraction? I write it over 1. A whole number can be written as an improper fraction by writing it over 1. I would look to multiply. Do you see that you can cross simplify? Divide by 2, you get 2. Divide by 2, you get 5. Notice I'm always dividing by the same thing. Whatever the common factor is, that's what I have to divide by. And now we're just multiplying across. So I get 145 over 2. I would simplify it. That goes in 72 times with a remainder of 1, so that's 72 1/2. Alright?